We're going to be continuing our investigation into the market model. Alright, so what we're going to do... Oh, Jensen's left. Okay. What we're going to be doing is jumping into Nearpod. So I posted into the classroom the Nearpod link. Alright, so what we're going to do is I'm going to do a share screen, present screen.
There you go.
Let me do that. Alright, there we go, Jensen's back. Now, so the code you should have in the classroom is 9ULRT. 9ULRT. So if you wouldn't mind clicking the link either in the classroom to the Nearpod or going to Nearpod and using the code. That would be fantastic. Alright, now, there you are. You're all there just about already. That's fantastic. Excellent. So we're going to continue on now learning about supply and demand, and we're up to demand. Let's move on through. Right, here we go, demand. Demand curve, we have law of demand. There, law of demand, and then we have income and substitution effects. Right, and exceptions to the law. Now, before we get to that, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to see you all. Now, what I would like you to do, ladies and gentlebeans, is I would like you to now, for maybe a minute, right, I would like you to have a chat. What is the law of demand? And what are the exceptions to the law of demand? And alright, income and substitution effect. Alright, so just where you are with the people sitting nearby, if you can have them sitting nearby, virtually nearby, have a wee conversation, see what you can come up with regards to what is the law of demand, what are the exceptions to the law of demand, and income and substitution effects. Ready? And I'll turn off my mic. Ready, set, go.
Hi, Dad.
So the law of demand is an individual's willingness and ability to purchase a good or service. So like the willingness being their wants or desire, and their ability in terms of their income. Can they afford it?
Yeah. Right. And the law... yeah. Sorry, go on.
My bad. You go first. You go first.
Okay. So law of demand is that when the price decreases, the demand actually increases, because that because if the price is lower, then that means people have like more income, like they have more buying power if they have the same income. So yeah, that was the law of demand. And you can go next, sure.
I mean, that's where the thing about substitute goods comes in, because people are usually tend to move towards a relatively cheaper good. That's what they consider as a substitute. That again links with the law of demand, as if the price is lower, quantity demanded increases. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, right. And if any of you can talk about the exceptions, that'd be great.
So one of the exceptions is Veblen goods. It's basically like something you use to more of because you buy it more of because it's it has an exclusive nature, and it appeals to you as like a status symbol. So like branded goods or something like that, and it doesn't really matter if the price is like insanely high. People will still buy it because to like show off or flex or.
Yeah, other example could be apparent necessities. Those are the things that those are the goods or services that you can't really live without. So for example, insulin injections. So it doesn't matter how expensive they will be, the people will still have to buy them to survive.
Then I think another would be future expectations. So for example, if the prices of goods and services are observed to be falling, then consumers will essentially hold out and will wait until, because they expect it to fall further, so they will wait until it falls further before they purchase it. Or if the price of goods and services are rising, then they will actually go ahead and buy quicker, because they think it may rise high in the future.
There's also changes in preferences and taste/fashion, which kind of like fits into the bandwagon effect, as when trends change, consumers don't necessarily behave how economists expect them to, and regardless of price, they'll consume a product since everyone else is doing it.
Another exception is the Giffen good. So they're like the inferior goods, like they're like the worst. They're so bad they're cheap, but that's the only thing people can afford. So that's what they only buy. So an example would be like the Venezuelan, they have like a rotten meat market because that's the only thing they can afford, because everything else is so expensive, but they need it.
All right, well done. Very good. Now, okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's jump back into Nearpod and doing the share screen. And here. Now, I've got up on the screen there for you in Nearpod. There's something called market demand. Market demand. Now, what I'm wanting you to do, now there's a little bit of maths here, not a huge amount, but a little bit of maths here. I'm wanting you to see if you can figure out how it is that we have come about figuring these numbers out. Where did these numbers come from? Who can tell me?
Adding the total demand like D1, D2, and D3.
Genius. Rock stars. Look at you all. Yes, absolutely. If you add D1 to D2 to D3, you should end up with this market demand quantity here. Yeah, there's a bit of an issue as we go further down. All right, doing some of the maths here doesn't quite add, but that's okay. But the general principle holds. This is D1 represents a consumer here, so that's consumer 1. All right, so there's Nisa, there's Ariane, and there's Joel, and that's their relative consumption choices for a price of 30, 40, 50, and 60. And so in order to get a market, so everybody in the market, in order to work out what the total market demand is, you've actually had to add up all of the individual quantities for the individual consumers at each price. Okay, and that should get you then a market demand. So that idea, the language we use when we describe this process is called a horizontal summation. So what we're doing is we're adding them horizontally. So horizontal sum, adding together, horizontal summation. So these numbers are created by the horizontal summation of the individual quantities consumed at the range of prices. That's kind of the technical way that we would describe that. So market demand is therefore different from individual demand. It's going to follow the same idea, the law of demand and the like, but we need to understand that it's an entire market and not an individual consumer in that particular case. Right, now, what determines where the demand curve is? Now, you might actually recognize our friend here. Who's that? Anybody do him?
Alfred Marshall.
Alfred Marshall, fantastic. Yes, indeed. One of the leading economic thinkers of, well, definitely of his time. And when he was around, he was basically the number 2 leading economist after Adam Smith. So that's not a bad idea at all. Now, he came up with a lot of the maths behind economics. And one of the things that he was thinking about was determinants of demand. So once we've got a demand curve, and a market demand curve in particular, what causes it to change? How we know that the curve is locked, okay, within that relationship, but if some outside event occurs, what's going to cause it to actually shift? So what will cause the slide in the playground to be picked up and moved somewhere else? And so the language again that we use, the terminology that we use, is we talk about determinants of demand, things that determine where the demand curve is. So we might talk about a change in income. If everybody is earning more income, say there's been a decrease in income tax, then everybody is more able to buy or consume at every single price level, so the demand curve shifts, and it's going to shift to the right. Okay, because remember, the zero, the origin point, is on the left, so if it moves to the right, that means it's going to increase, so there will be an increase in demand if incomes rise. The next one is that change in tastes and preferences, and we discussed that with regards to an exception to the law, but it's also something that's going to actually basically break the ceteris paribus conditions, because if everybody then decides that they prefer this particular type of soft drink over this other type of soft drink, Coca-Cola, right, then they will change their demand preferences as well, right, and so therefore potentially an increase in demand from that. Now this bit here, this is a substitute good that we're talking about. So these are goods that are substitutes. They're the ones that we consume in place of or instead of another good. Right? So a substitute good is in New Zealand, I would explain it like in a sports metaphor, where you would have students in a basketball team, teammates, and you'd have 5 on the court, and then you'd have 5 to 7 sitting on the bench. Right? And those people on the bench would be subs, and they would come in to replace one of the 5 who was on the court. Not add to, but actually replace. And the learners in New Zealand understood that because it's a sporting reference, so they got that one. So that's where we get the substitute goods from. So if you buy Coca-Cola, the substitute to Coca-Cola might be considered to be Pepsi. So here, if we say that there's a change in the price, so for example, if the price of Pepsi was to decrease, then we might decrease our demand for Coca-Cola and instead move that demand into Pepsi, because we're the bargain hunters, we're the ones who want to maximize our utility, so we're going to look for the cheapest, best deal possible, right? And that might be Pepsi in that particular example. The next one again is a little bit more language based, maybe new to us all or new to some of us, and it's the idea of a price of a complement. I don't like complimentary, complement good. Now it doesn't mean it's free. Don't make that association, because that's a very English language association of that word. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a good that you purchase alongside another good. So they're kind of like the best buddies, right, of the good. So if you go into the supermarket, you might buy bread and butter. You might go into the technology shop and buy a cell phone and a cell phone charger these days, because apparently they're not shipping with them. You might buy a cell phone and a cell phone case. They are deemed to be complementary goods. So in this case, say for example, the price of a cell phone was to decrease, then you might see an increase in the quantities demanded of cell phones, but an increase in the demand for the complement good, which would be cell phone cases, if we use those as an example. Then you've got, yes, price expectations, which we again used as an exception to the law. So it means that we've broken the other law, right, the other demand curve, we've broken that, and now we're setting up a new demand curve somewhere else. And likewise here, we've got a change in the number of the consumers in the market. So in the other example, you had, 3 consumers in that market, 4 consumers? And what happens if we have 5? What happens if we have 10? What happens if we have 20? So the more people we add into the market, the theory suggests, the more demand there will be. Right? So those are the determinants of demand. Right? Now, you can guess what's going to come next. I'm going to ask you to explain 2 of those determinants. How do they impact on demand? Ready, set, go.
you. What? What are they doing? What do they do? Dad.
All right, about another minute.
Why?
So be noisy.
Don't want to.
Well, then don't be noisy.
Okay, allow me.
All right. Okay. Okay, that looks right. Now. So, here's where we start adding a little bit of extra, all right? And it is terminology based. So, if we just take a quick look at our demand curve, this is just how we would explain things to an examiner. And it's not everybody who's going to get this, but you know, I think you all will, because you're all rock stars. But compared to the rest of the learners around the world, they may not get this particular bit. So we'll press on here. When we talk about a demand curve and we think about moving up and down the slide, moving up and down the demand curve, the language that we use is quite important. So the terminology that we describe, we talk about a contraction if we are moving up the demand curve. All right, and when I mean up, I'm meaning towards zero, so there is a reduction in the quantities demanded. That would be a contraction. If we see moving down the slide here, down the demand curve, then we talk about an expansion of quantity demanded. So the quantity demanded is getting bigger. We're moving away from zero. So contraction to the left, expansion to the right when we move along the curve. You'd use that terminology to talk about moving along the demand curve. Okay. Now, I've also included some extra notes as well in there. The link is in the slides, should that be something you're interested in. Now, I've also included in the slides, there's a couple wee video clips here. We'll be familiar with our friend here, Econ Plus Dale. You can also follow him on the Instagrams, and you can follow him on Twitter and Facebook as well. There is the Micro Revolution University, which is university level, but they are very good. All right. You might have to pick and choose what you actually watch with that, because sometimes some of their videos are actually quite advanced. And here, now, this is a demand curve exercise. So what I'd like you to do on the computer in the Nearpod, and I know it's not easy because you're doing it on the computer, but I'd like you to have a go at drawing on the computer what happens to the demand curve if there has been a decrease in income tax. All right. So it's not easy to do. All right, but have a go. when I finished my class. Alright, some good work there. Well done. It's not an easy tool to use, the drawing tool for me, but you're doing well. Interesting. Fatima and Yinsen, have you noticed that yours are, some of your arrows are in a different direction to everybody else's, or a number of others? And Arena? Have a think about what direction it might be moved in. There's a decrease in income tax. What does that mean?
I messed it up. Yeah, I know which direction it should be. My bad. I saw tax and I was like, oh wait, tax. Sorry.
Alright, there's a method to my madness. I wanted exactly that response. That's a good one. Good work, Sharaf. Good. Oh, Dane, fantastic. Look at that. And the one submitted by Neopod, that looks very good as well. No Neopod was in my class, but apparently they are. Okay, now I'm going to show you how much time have we got? Okay. A little more. Okay. Let's have a look at Dane's. Alright, so Dane's done this really well. She's got her two demand curves. She's shown an increase in the demand curve. You know it's an increase because it's moving away from the zero. Oops, disappeared somewhere. There it is. Alright, got labels here, D1 and D2, so that you know that it is a definite increase in demand. We've got arrows showing the direction of movement. That's very good to see. She's also done this. Now this is very good. This is a much higher level skill. What Dane is showing here is that at this price, this quantity was consumed for D1, but at the same price, this quantity here is consumed for D2. So that's illustrating also, and then additionally, that the quantity demanded has increased as well at each and every price. So that's why Dane has done that. It's a very, very good, I'll share it with everybody. It's a very, very good way to represent this particular example. Well done. Okay, now, moving on. Now what I've done is I've put here for you to practice with. Right? There's a whole bunch here that you can have a go at. Increase in the price of iPhones, an increase in the price, this is for Apple, right? For the demand for Apple iPhones. So say the iPhone 12, which is obviously on its way. Price of Apple iPhones, the price of Samsung smartphones, an increase in consumer income, successful advertising campaign promoting Samsung phones. Now you'll notice 3 out of the 4 of these particular situations are all determinants of demand, but number 1 is not. Number 1 says is an increase in the price of Apple iPhones. Now we know that that's not a determinant of demand, and instead that's part of the relationship, right, that is expressed along a demand curve. So in that case, because this is a little bit of a trap for young players, I've included this one here because what I'm wanting you to see is that that's part of the law of demand. So that one is a movement along the demand curve, whereas these others, 1, 2, and 3, are all going to be shifts of the demand curve. So the demand curve is going to move. All right? So have a go at those. When you do this as revision, when you do this, and if you're getting stuck, or if you want me to double check, right, see if you've got the demand curve moving in the right direction, Fatima, then I can do that. Happy to do that. Right, so that's those ones. Now, check this out. For those of you who are mathematically inclined, and I know it's not everybody, right, I'm going to just show you this. Now, you don't need to worry about this. You actually don't need to take any notes on this either. However, this is a bit of an extra for experts bit, right? When you get to university, one of the things that you will learn with regards to the demand curve, one of the things, is that it actually has what's called a function, and it's called a linear demand function. And so what it is there's your quantity demanded, and what we're saying is that it is equal to these variables here. And what we make these variables, they're made up of the level of what's called autonomous consumption, which sounds awful fancy. Autonomous meaning automatic, like a robot. Right? Autonomous consumption, that's this one. And that is the consumption that you are going to consume, that you kind of have to consume. And if you don't consume that, then basically you're dead. Right? That's that. Right? The least amount of consumption that you need in order to survive. That's that bit. The other level here, if we look at that, where it says B, right, that's the change in quantity demanded resulting from a change in the price. So that amount of consumption there is related to the price. So that's then the relationship that you see between price and quantity demanded, and it gives you that negative or inverse relationship. So that's it. That's what we've been talking about, but it's expressed now in a mathematical context. Now, the secret is this. Now if you go on to university, that's what you will look at. Okay. However, right, you have a slight advantage because you've seen it, right? But also because you're in the new economics syllabus. In the old economics syllabus, you actually had to learn this. In the new economic syllabus, you don't have to learn this, right? But it is quite cool because what you could find is you could actually then, when we look at supply, you would actually find a supply function, and then you're able to put the two functions together, and we can actually create a market just using these functions. And as said, when you get to university, that becomes quite a helpful skill. So if that is something that is of interest to you and you want to know more about that, there are resources about all of this linear function business, and they're in the site, and they're also in the, because I sent you today, I sent you what's called a master plan, or a master plan document, and you can just grab that document and chuck it into your computer, and it's got hyperlinks in it to pretty much all of the work that we're going to do, right? Not all of it, because I update and change, and obviously we've got a new syllabus, but if you're wanting to look ahead, and obviously you could look really far ahead, okay, which isn't particularly useful, I don't necessarily think at the moment, but if you wanted to, you could go all the way to the end of the course and see what we're going to do. At the moment, we don't need this because, as said, it's part of the old syllabus, but it is quite an interesting idea, and if this is an interesting topic for you, then there are definitely resources there that you could use to look up what linear demand functions are all about, how do they work, what does it all mean. Okay? But it is something that quite clearly illustrates that inverse relationship. All right, moving on. Now, if you've been online of late, you might have found these things. Come here. Come sit with me. Come sit with me. Sit. Come sit. Right. Right. So, these are all things that you could actually find on Amazon. These are all things people actually demand. So, in case you're not sure, this is a gummy bear in the shape of Donald Trump. Why you would want that, I don't know. But there is there.
Maybe so you can eat Donald Trump.
Right. These are duck feet that you can put on your hand, so you can walk your fingers around like they're duck feet. Right. This is it's a pickle, right? And what you do is you push the button, and it's a voice recorder, and it records your voice, so you can record your conversations on a pickle. This one you might have seen before. This one here is a nose soap dispenser, So you put it up in your shower, you fill it up with soap, and then you push on the nose, and the soap comes out, so like goo, I guess.
It's like boogers.
Right, boogers. This one here is unicorn meat. So it's not actual unicorn meat, it's just called unicorn meat, and people buy that. This one is Donald Trump toilet paper. I think there's probably quite a bit of demand for that one, I would suggest. This is, well, hat.
Poop hat.
Poop hat, yes, you can buy that.
And put it on your head to make it look like someone pooped on your head.
That is right. This one here is, these are instant underpants. So you take the tin, you put it in some water, and it creates underpants for you. Again, I don't know why you would want any of these. But if you thought those were strange, you can also find these on Amazon too.
What?
Now, this here is called nothing. It is a little plastic ball filled with nothing. And the tagline for this says, for those who have everything, here is nothing. And the idea is that for somebody who's got a lot of money and things, you buy them this, and it's supposed to represent that you've bought them nothing. This one here, you may not be able to tell from the image, but that's glow-in-the-dark toilet paper.
Wait, so you can wipe it in your butt and then like
it glows in the dark. Yes, it does. All right.
So it makes it dark, then you can use the toilet paper.
Yes. We understand, son. All right. This one here is called handapants. All right. So they're gloves that look like underpants that you then wear on your hands. Okay. Now, this you might not know what this is. This is a life-size model of Bigfoot. So somebody wants that, and they want to have that, I guess, in their house.
I think it's actually supposed to surprise people.
Possibly. This here, now apparently these are very popular, I believe, in South Korea, I'm told. These are salmon cushions.
Salmon cushions?
Right, so they're cushions that look like a slice of salmon. Now this one, I'm not sure if you can see this one particularly clearly, but what that is, it's a sticker that you put on your wall, and it's a sticker of an older woman with an inhaler. Again, I'm not entirely sure why you would want that, but my point with all of these, thank you, you can go now.
I want to sit here now.
The point with all of these is that there's actually a demand for all of these products. Right? They're actually, you can, or at least you could, the last I checked, go on Amazon and find these very products and more. There's even weirder things than this on Amazon. Right? There's Donald Trump bobbleheads. Yeah. There's the Donald Trump cartoon superhero comic book. Right? There's all sorts of things that, if you really wanted to, you could find these things. And what that means is that there is actually demand for these products, because they don't put them out there if there's no demand for them. Right? It's not worth them producing these products, and they're definitely not going to put them up for sale if there's no demand for them. Son, I'm with them. Yeah. What did you want to say?
But nothing more just is useless. If you can't open it, you can't bounce it, then it's why would someone buy it? It's like,
that's a very good question.
It's literally that it's nothing, but it's just a plastic ball here.
That is. That's absolutely right. So therefore, why people want to buy such things, we really don't know, but there actually is a demand for it. All right. Now, I think we're nearly where I want to get to. Yes. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the very last thing I want us to do today is a surprise. All right, we're talking about supply. See what I did there? No?
No.
All right, okay. Now, supply is going to be, if you like, the other side or the other blade of a pair of scissors. So the first blade, because scissors have got two blades, right? The first blade of a pair of scissors is demand, and the other blade of a pair of scissors, as in this particular metaphor, is supply. All right, so if we have a look, just very quickly, we're not going to do a lot on this today. Now, supply is going to be very much like demand, okay? But for supply, we're thinking about the producers and the production of goods and services. So, supply is all about producers' willingness and ability, just like with demand, but willingness and ability to produce a good or a service. So, why do they produce it? Well, they produce the good or service usually because there is a profit motive for them to do it. They think they're going to earn some profit from the sale of the product. So therefore, this is what we end up with. This is a law of supply. Just as we had a law of demand, so here you go, it's a third law that you've learnt so far. And this one says, an increase in the price of a good will lead to an increase in the quantity supplied of a good or service, and vice versa, holding everything else constant. Now that means that this relationship, which is different from the demand relationship, this is the supply, this relationship is actually what's called a positive relationship. Again, something that your mother wants for you. Right? This is a positive relationship in this case. An increase in the price of the good is going to be is matched by an increase in the quantity supplied of the good as well. So that's going to be supply. And when we map it out, we're actually going to end up with a supply curve. You can probably see where this is going. Our supply curve, because it's a positive relationship, that supply curve is then going to be upwards sloping, like that. Right? So therefore, there's the zero, so it's increasing that way. So what we're suggesting is, as you see from the law, as the price increases, the quantity supplied increases as well. The language we use is still the same. If we're moving up this particular slide, then we're going to see an expansion in this case, because the quantities are getting bigger. If we're moving down this particular slide, then it's going to be a contraction, right? And that's what we're going to see later. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and go back to here. Hello.
Hi.
And I'd like to say thank you for your work today. Now, here's what I'm wanting you to do. All right, I would very much like for you to review the material that we've covered. Okay, because one of the things that's going to happen, well, there's going to be things posted into the classroom. Yes, absolutely, and keep those in mind. But on Friday, when I
There's a storm here,
Right.
Dad.
Thor didn't like that idea. When we come back on Friday, when we're doing virtual learning on Friday, one of the things I'm going to want from you, please, is a pen and a piece of paper, right? Because we're going to start illustrating shifts and movements of curves, and I'd like you to be able to draw some of them physically on pen and paper. So if you could bring that.
It's raining in
That
here.
is. All right, son. All right, now. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's good for you to have a wee break now. So review the material covered today. If you have any questions, please ask. Go through some of the things I've posted recently. See if there are things that are useful for you. Add them into your folders, etc. There is some other things that we're working through at the moment that hopefully will be able to be fed to you. When we're back, when we're back at school, I'm going to chase up the admin woman with regards to your electronic textbook to see where we're at with that. Hopefully, we will be quite far ahead, but I don't know. Otherwise, as we'd say in the land of my birth, hei konera, which means goodbye for now.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. See you. See you. Bye.
Bye. Have a nice weekend.
Well, it's not a weekend yet, some that's still got.
And have a nice day.
Mr. David, I have a few questions.
Certainly, go ahead.
Okay, so when we go back and look at the given goods and the apparent necessities, isn't given goods also a necessity?
Yeah, you could consider it that. You're probably more likely to call a given good a staple good rather than a necessity, but yeah,
Okay.
because we're going to look into the idea of necessities, and we're going to actually have a quantification. We're going to have a way to calculate whether they are a necessity or not, and it's a little bit of maths, but it's not too bad, and it will be there at this level. They are a given good. At this level, they're an inferior good. At this level, they're a normal good. Then they're going to be a luxury good if they go beyond that. So we're going to actually have like a scale, and it's a quantifiable one. So, and the other thing that I'm going to be saying at that time is even within those boundaries, there's going to be a whole range, a whole spectrum within there. And then you've also got to add in individual understandings as well, because what might be a staple good for you might not be a staple good for someone else.
Lego.
Yeah? And we'll get to that.
Okay.
I have Lego.
And a demand curve is always sloping down. It's a negative,
Lego.
has a negative gradient, right?
Gosh, you asked hey, I'm talking. You've asked a very good question, and yeah, you're right to assume that, because in theory and what we are going to study, yes, it will always be downward sloping, it will always be a negative slope. However, if we are considering inferior goods, and in particular a Giffen good, then there is a strong possibility that if we were to map a Giffen good, that it actually might be positively sloped.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but that's a little bit beyond what you need at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. David. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have
Bye.
a good day.
Have a good day over Lego my ego.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, Lego my ego. Lego my ego my